So, good morning, everyone. Today, I will start with the new chapter, Joint Time Frequency Analysis. Okay. So, usually what happens is that till now, what we have mainly seen that for either the Fourier series or Fourier transform, they are used for the analysis of the signals, whether it is the normal Fourier transform or discrete Fourier transform or discrete time Fourier transform or whatever. Okay, so in general, I am talking about that we have seen we analyze the signal using the Fourier series or the Fourier transform. Now, if you have to represent the signal, a signal say xt, it has three parameters. One is amplitude, one is time parameter, and is another is frequency. Now, if you look into the signal xt, in the normal time domain, we will be having the amplitude, okay, and we will be getting some signals like this. Now, if you perform the Fourier transform, then what you get? You get frequencies versus amplitude, something like this. So, if you see in the first case, the frequency component is missing, and in the second case, the time component is missing. Okay. Sorry, yeah, in the second case, the time component is missing. So there is, so whatever the Fourier series and the Fourier transforms we have seen, there are no transforms which are analyzing the signals using all the three parameters. And this is one of the disadvantages. Now this disadvantage can be overcome if we go for the joint time frequency analysis. And this is what we will be studying in this chapter. The references for these chapters include this time frequency toolbox. It is basically a MATLAB toolbox for joint time frequency analysis, which have been developed by Auger, F. Auger and his team. And the second, uh, this reference is the conceptual wavelets in digital signal processing by D. Lee Fugel. And this book, the PDF of this book you will find in the online. So initial chapters they are free. However, at the later stages when the author goes for the advanced what you call techniques, they are paid. However, we will not go to those advanced techniques. We will be restricting ourselves to the concepts of the wavelets in digital signal processing, and you can access the free PDFs of, from the internet. And lastly, the LabVIEW manuals by the National Instruments, uh, the joint time frequency analysis, this toolbox in the LabVIEW manual, the examples from there have also been borrowed. Okay. So let's start the chapter. So when we talked about the signals, initially we have talked about different types of signals like energy and power signals, right? We talked about periodic and aperiodic signals and so on. But herein, when we try to discuss about the joint time frequency analysis, we come up with another type of signal categories which are regarded as stationary and non-stationary signals. Stationary signals are the signals whose frequency component does not change over a period of time. Right? Whereas non-stationary signals are those signals whose frequency component changes over time. Okay. So in this regard, all biomedical signals are non-stationary signals. Okay. Now you would say, why, sir? So we consider the ECG signal as one of the periodic signals, but even if you look into the ECG signals, what happens that when you are resting, the nature of, suppose from the resting you start running, the pattern of the signals, it would change. Okay, and so would the frequency in the response of the heart, of the ECG signal, that would also change, right? Now next is, suppose you are having some disease in the pathophysiological cases, say fibrillation. The pattern of the ECG signal would change, and also some of the frequency component would also change, and there are so many examples. So if you see, even the signals which are regarded as the periodic signals, which are supposed to be stationary signals, that signal is also changing its frequency components over a period of time. Now, this is one of the important thing, and this gives us an indication that even if a periodic signal it changes its frequency composition over time, then the other signals like EMG, suppose now you are working, you will be getting a particular type of EMG. Suppose you are taking 1 kg load, the frequency component of the EMG would be different than the condition where you are taking 2 kg of load. Okay, so these might change. So all this thing you have to keep in mind. So non-station, so if you see all these biological signals or the biomedical signals, their frequency components, they are changing over a period of time. Okay, now for the analysis of these non-stationary signals in a proper manner, we need to have joint time frequency analysis. Okay. Now coming to the Fourier next topic, Fourier series, we have discussed previously that in the Fourier series that any periodic signals, they can be represented by adding a series of sinusoids and a DC component. In the Fourier transform, it is an extension of the Fourier series, and we have seen over here that the Fourier transform says that any signals can be represented with a combination of sinusoids. Okay, and this is the takeaway from here. Now let us see the principle of Fourier analysis, what it does. Suppose you have a pulse signal and it is having a frequency of 20 hertz. Okay, now what we do in the Fourier analysis, basically we take a series of sinusoids. Okay, so initially we have a say 40 hertz sinusoid. Then what we do, we take this 40 hertz sinusoid and we do the correlation with the original signal, and we find out the correlation. Okay, so this is the frequency, this is the correlation amplitude, correlation value. Okay, so suppose at 40 hertz, you can see in hertz, we do the correlation. We know that our pulse signal, it is having 20 hertz composition, so the correlation would be lower. Okay, then we go to 20 hertz. In 20 hertz, we use a 20 hertz sinusoid. Now we do the correlation with the pulse signal. Over here, the correlation would be higher. Okay, then we go to the 10 hertz signal. Over here again, you'll be having a low correlation. Now, if you join this, you are having a peak something like this. So at 10, you are having a low correlation. At 20, you are having a high correlation. At 40, you are having a low correlation. Now, when we talk about these sinusoids, basically, if we have seen in Fourier transform that we use an infinite number of the sinusoids. So instead of taking the sinusoids only at these frequencies, we go on taking on the sinusoids of different frequencies and we map this correlation value. And if the signal says, say the pulse signal, it contains a frequency value of say 20 hertz and say 100 hertz, then we would have got peaks at 20 hertz and 100 hertz. Okay, so in this way, it basically the Fourier transform of Fourier transform, it tries to do the frequency analysis of any given signal. Okay, it basically does the correlation analysis with any given signal. Okay, so in this way, if you see that whatever I told you that has been shown, so this is what we do it using. We find out the Fourier spectrum in that manner. We have the signal. When we do the Fourier transform, we have this constituent sinusoids over there, and then what we do, we actually perform the correlation between the pulse signal and the constituent sinusoids, and then we get this kind of plot which is regarded as Fourier spectrum plot. Okay, so see, at 40 we have a very low correlation, at 10 we have a very low correlation, and at 20 we have a very high correlation. Okay, suppose a signal is having a frequency component of say 20 hertz, 60 hertz and 80 hertz, then we would be getting three peaks. When we do the Fourier transform, we get three peaks at same 20 hertz, 60 hertz and 80 hertz. Now this amplitude of these peaks would also vary depending upon the amplitude of the constituent frequency sinusoids within the signals. Okay. Now to prove that, if we see that if we take a square wave and if you do the FFT, you will see that we get a series of peaks. Say this is a 100 hertz square wave. So we get a peak at 100 hertz, we get a peak at 300 hertz, and then we get another peak at around this 600 hertz and so on. Okay. So over here, what we are seeing that at regular intervals, we are getting a peak. Okay. So what are these? So as I said you previously, we have an infinite number of sinusoids, and when we are which are constituting the square wave, so we get the frequency component of these constituent peaks. Okay. Yeah, it would be the peak is at 500. Sorry. Okay, the peak would be at 500. Yeah. So over here we are getting in this manner we will get the peak. Now, if we apply a band pass filter across say 100 hertz, say we take a 50 to 150 hertz, and if we filter it, see we have got a sinusoidal wave. Then again, if we take the next this peak and design a filter bandpass filter around the central frequency of or the resonating frequency of 300, we get C. In the second case also we get another sinusoids. Okay, so from here we can say that the square waves, which are periodic waves, they are constituted of a series of sinusoidal signals. So this is a practical example. Now coming to another example, ECG. So this would be without uniform white noise. So we have the ECG signal. Now if you take the FFT of the ECG signal, we get something like this. Okay. Now if I apply a filter of say 5 to 7.5 hertz, see, we are getting a kind of periodic signal which is constituted of a series of sinusoids. Okay, there may be 2 or 3 sinusoids or even 4 sinusoids, I don't know, but the pattern, if you look over here and again you look into the other pattern, so it is getting repeated. So that means whatever is the signal component over here, we are getting some repeating patterns. Okay, and we all know that all the repeating patterns, they are ultimately being constituted with sinusoidal signals. Okay, now again when I fine tune the signal component again to 5 to 6 hertz, see, I start to get a sinusoidal signal. Obviously there are some distortions over here. Now this distortion is due to the what you call this that when you apply a filter, it needs some time to get stabilized. Okay, so during that stabilization process, you will get what you call a non-sinusoidal, you may get a non-sinusoidal signal. Okay, so if you look near to the end, the filter output, it is getting stabilized and you are getting stable sinusoid. Okay, so you can see even an ECG signal, it is also being constituted with some sinusoidal signals. Okay, so whether you are having a stationary signal like the square wave, it is also a what you call, it is constituted of a series of sinusoids. The non-stationary signal like ECG, it is also seen that they are the sinusoidal signals, and this we also know theoretically from the Fourier transforms basics. Now the problem comes, suppose we use Sharp and inverse Sharp signals. So if you look into the nature of the Sharp and the Sharp signal, in the Sharp signal you have the low frequency, and as the time progresses your frequency increases. Okay, on the other hand, in the inverse Sharp, we start with a high frequency and then as the time progresses we go to lower frequency, right? But the frequency component in both the Sharp and the inverse Sharp, they are same. Now if you do the Fourier transform of the Sharp and the inverse Sharp signals, what you would get? You would get that the nature of the FFT is same. Now the question arises, if there are two signals, say x1t, and if you get x of omega and you have another t, x2t, you have got the same thing, x of omega. Now when you do the inverse transform, will you get to x2t or will you get to x1t? What it is? This is a major problem with the Fourier transform. If you have any signal component, it is no doubt the Fourier transform is a very powerful transform, and whatever the signal you get, say xt, you get x omega. And again, you apply the inverse Fourier transform and you get to the xt domain. Now, in this kind of signals, where you can generate two types of signals that are having same frequency component, in those cases, Fourier transforms, it fails to solve that problem. So whether you will get to the x1t or whether you will get to the x2t. And due to this process, due to this fallacy, there is a need to have a set of algorithms which can analyze the signal considering all the three parameters like amplitude, time, and frequency. Okay. Now, why this is happening? Why this fallacy is happening? I told you before. If you see the normal time domain signal, here frequency is missing, and in its Fourier transform, you see its time domain information is missing. This is the important thing to remember. Okay. Now, if we can design any algorithm or the transform which can have all the three parameters, amplitude, time, and frequency, in the same plane, it will help us in analyzing the signal in a better way. So, as I said you, can we truly reconstruct the original signal from the FFT? The answer is no. Okay. So for this, one of the simplest algorithm is short time Fourier transform spectrogram. Okay. Now, if you see in this short time Fourier transform spectrogram, you have time, you have frequency in the XY axis, and this color coded stuff, it is in the Z plane. So the red is having the highest amplitude, and as you go towards lowers, you are getting lower and lower amplitude values. Okay. In this case, if you see the central part, it is having the highest value somewhere over here. Okay. Now, what is short time Fourier transform? We all know the Fourier transform. We have the amplitude and the time, and you have got some signal like this. You apply the Fourier transform and you get frequency versus amplitude. Now, in short time Fourier transform, what we do is that we create a window in the time domain. Say this, the thickness of the window is delta t. So we will take the first components within this window and do the Fourier transform. Then we will shift this window to the next level. Then we will take the next signal component and we will do the Fourier transform. Okay. And that is how it is being done. So what you have when you take the delta t, you have this time information. And over here, when you get to this Fourier transform, you get information about time, you get information about amplitude, and in the Z plane, you can get information about the frequency. Okay, and you can interchange over here. So in this case, if you see our y is f and this is amplitude. Okay, so you can interchange all this thing. The main thing is that we get a three-dimensional information over there where all the three components, time, amplitude, and frequency are present. Now, if you see the spectrogram of the Sharp and the inverse Sharp, they are different. In the spectrogram of the Sharp, as you see, as you increase the time, your frequency component is increasing, and in the inverse Sharp, as you decrease the time, your as you increase the time, your frequency component it decreases. Now, if you see these spectrogram at the high frequency levels, you are getting relatively good spectrum. However, what is happening to the low frequency components? During the low frequency components, you see there are some distortions. Okay. Here also, now we are having the low frequency component and there are some distortions. Now, why this is so? The thing is that when we design a window in the time domain, it is also related with the frequency. So delta t, or we can say from here time period, capital T, is inversely proportional to 1 by f. So what is happening? You have a fixed time period for this window. Now, when you are analyzing any sinusoids, you need to keep in mind that the one full cycle of the sinusoid, at least one full cycle of the sinusoid is taken for the analysis. Now, when you are getting to the low frequency components over here, what would happen? It might so happen that during this window, one full sinusoid it is not coming. Okay. For the high frequency components, so you have this thing, a low frequency component, relatively low frequency component. Then you have a relatively high frequency component. Okay. So over here, see, there are at least one sinusoid within that time period. Whereas when you go towards the low frequency, especially if you go towards the DC frequency, it would be straight line. And it is having a time period of capital T tending to infinity. So low frequency components, they will not be properly analyzed by this short time window which is being created by the short time Fourier transform. And due to this, you will find some problem in the low frequency region. And this is one of the important parameters. However, for the relatively better thing, you will be able to get the proper what you call spectrum. Now you would say, okay, sir, for analyzing this low frequency component, let us increase the window. But we have to remember, in short time Fourier transform, you can only select one window length. Okay. Now, when you are trying to select a longer window length, what would happen? What is happening? You would lose the frequency resolution. You would lose the frequency resolution. Okay. That means you would be taking a larger window to analyze the thing, and then you will not be getting a very good frequency resolution in the time domain in that window. So somewhere we have to trade off, and where is the trade? How to do the trade off? It all depends upon your need. Okay. So then moving, I hope everyone has understood what I am trying to say over here. What I try to say is that when we create the window, it is having a time and it is having a bandwidth or frequency component. So if you increase the time due to its inverse relationship, T inverse related to frequency on the bandwidth, if you increase the T, frequency resolution will decrease, and if you decrease the T, your frequency resolution will increase. Okay. But in ideal condition, we want that the resolution of in both T and B should be very good, but that is not possible because time and the frequency both are having what you call inverse relationship. Okay. So when you try to achieve a very good time resolution, you will lose the frequency resolution and vice versa. So due to this, so what happens is that we come to one important factor which is called the localization of the signals. Now, why this is coming? When I say that I have taken one window in the time domain and I have cut the signal. Okay. And because of this, I would get an average time within this period, because it say it starts with 0 and it ends at 1. So I would get an average value of 0.5 because we need to plot it in that way. Okay. Similarly, when you would be performing the frequency analysis, you will also get the average frequency. Okay, which will be the central frequency. So you will be having initially average time, average frequency. Okay, but all of this is spread. We are not only talking about this average time or the average frequency, but there are a set of frequency component or a set of time domain component. So in reality, for a particular atom or no, for a particular time period, what we will see that we are getting a signal component something like this, and it is having a spread in the y-axis and also in the x-axis, and those are that spread is regarded as time spreading and frequency spreading. I'm not going into the details of the mathematics, just I'm giving you the gist. So what this mathematical expression suggests. So for depicting this joint time frequency analysis signal component, we need these four components like average time, average frequency, time spreading, and the frequency spreading. And as we go further, we will see that these things are really needed to analyze the thing. One important thing is one criteria. It is called the Heisenberg-Gaber inequality. And the Heisenberg-Gaber inequality is a lower bound inequality which says time bandwidth product is a lower bound fraction of 1. Okay. So what I said, your time is fixed. You're fixing your window. Okay. Now the frequency, what it can analyze for this t, you will be having 1 by b for a typical this thing. If the frequency decreases below this typical or the critical frequency and it gets lower bound, then what would happen? Those what you call problems. So what you have seen over here, at the low frequency components, you're not getting proper results. They will creep in. Okay, so it will give you some erroneous result. So the Heisenberg-Gaber inequality, it says that for satisfactory analyzing a signal, we have a condition of time bandwidth product which should be lower bound to 1. Okay. And why this is so? So if you say for a particular t, we are having say t1, we are having a b1 factor. Okay. Now for b1, it would be 1 by t1. Now if you replace this b with 1 by t1 or 1 by t, basically for that particular window, we get this t and this t cancels out and we get this thing. Now if you increase the frequency over here, this t would, what it would do, if you increase the bandwidth, this t would decrease. Ultimately the time bandwidth product will be higher than 1. Okay, so you have to keep in mind that depending upon what is the time length of the window, depending upon that you can analyze the frequency component, and there is a lower bound what you call a lower bound frequency is there. Beneath that lower bound frequency you cannot analyze the what you call the signal the frequency components. Okay, so over here we can say a signal cannot have simultaneously and arbitrarily small support in time and in frequency. Okay, this is what we get from this Heisenberg-Gabor inequality equation. The lower bound t multiplied by b equal to 1, it is reached for the Gaussian functions. The Gaussian signals are those which minimize the time bandwidth product according to the Heisenberg-Gabor inequality. Okay. Now then comes an instantaneous frequency. When we talk about this instantaneous frequency or the instantaneous amplitude, we talk about the analytic signals. This is because when we talk about normal Fourier transform, we have seen basically we talk about frequencies from minus infinity to infinity. Now I have introduced one important term which is called analytic signals. So analytic signal is given by this equation x at equals to xt plus jht. This ht is of x of t. Now what it does basically, it basically helps you in negating all the frequency components in the components where frequency is less than 0. So it suppresses the negative frequency component results. Okay. And you have frequency components only in the positive domain. Otherwise, when you would go for this instantaneous frequency or instantaneous amplitude equation, what would happen if you are having at a particular time, if you are having a frequency, now that frequency, is it the negative frequency or the positive frequency? Okay, so there a confusion would arise. Okay, to avoid that thing, we use the analytic signals, and later on we will also see if what happens if in the joint time frequency analysis, if you do not use analytic signals. Okay, so over there we will see that if you do not use analytic signals, if you do not use the analytic signals, then within the spectrogram we will find a large amount of noise. Okay, now from there we can get after getting the analytic signals, from here we can get an instantaneous amplitude at a particular time. What is the amplitude we can find out. Similarly, at a particular time, what is the frequency we can find out by instantaneous frequency. Okay, now if you look the curve again, this is a sharp and the second graph is the inverse sharp. Now we have mean instantaneous frequency and mean instantaneous frequency for both the sharp and the inverse sharp. Now if you see, when I plot this mean instantaneous frequency where we have time and the frequency, you see as the time is progressing, we are getting an increase in the frequency component in the MIF plot. In the second case, the frequency is decreasing. Okay, over here also if you see, there are some distortions at the low frequency levels. Okay, so from here we can see that the estimation of the mean instantaneous frequency of the sharp and the inverse sharp signals, they can help us in analyzing a non-stationary signals. However, this is one of the most primitive signal processing tools. Now we have the mean instantaneous frequency. There is another term which is called group delay. With regards to the mean instantaneous frequency, we have another behavior which is basically the local time behavior. Okay, and that local time behavior, it is regarded as the group delay. So what we know, the instantaneous frequency characterizes a local frequency behavior as a function of time. In a dual way, the local time behavior as a function of frequency is described by the group delay. Okay, that means for mean instantaneous frequency, there would be another curve which we may get, which is called group delay. And this is being given by this equation. Now, does the instantaneous frequency and the group delay define two different curves in time frequency plane? This is one of the important parameter. Now, if you see our previous graph over here, I have added the group delays. Now, if you see mean instantaneous frequency and group delay, if you see in the mean instantaneous frequency, our dependent variable was frequency. However, in the group delay, our dependent variable, it has become time, right? And vice versa. So in both the cases, if you compare these two things, you will see with an increase in time, your frequency component increases. Okay. Similarly, over here, with an increase in time, our frequency component, it decreases, right? That means our mean instantaneous frequency and group delay, they are providing similar information. Okay, but stop here before making a concrete what you call concrete decision. Next, in the next slide, if you see, we have taken another Sharp signal and another inverse Sharp signal, and in this case, if you see what is happening, the mean instantaneous frequency and the group delay, they are not representing the same information. Now, what has changed? The change over here is the time bandwidth product. If you see over here, the frequency component is up to 250. Time is 1 and frequency is 250. Okay. If you come over here, frequency is 50. So our time bandwidth product, it has reduced, we have reduced significantly over here. Okay. Now in this case, what you are getting, that your mean instantaneous frequency and group delay, they are completely different. Okay. Ideally, they should have been the same, but they are different. So this is one of the important disadvantage of the mean instantaneous frequency and the group delay, and hence they are not used in very high level analysis. Okay. So the question over here which arose is that, is there any need for other tools for characterizing signals in time frequency domain? The answer is yes. Okay. Now, when the answer is yes, then we go to the what you call more advanced type of joint time frequency analysis. And over here we have this first class of solution which performs the atomic decomposition of the signals. That means the signals are being decomposed. Okay, and then you apply this STFT, short time Fourier transform, time scale analysis, and wavelet analysis. Okay, we do the analysis directly on the signals using some this windows. In the second class of solutions, we have energy distributions. Okay, and over here we have Wigner-Villay distribution, pseudo-Wigner-Villay distributions, and Cohen's class analysis. Okay. And in the first case, you have you decompose the signal. So okay, whereas in the second class, you consider about the energy distributions. Now these are some of the sampling of the time frequency plane. In the Shannon, what we do, we create these windows in the time domain, and whatever the frequency components are there, we accept that. And this is what we do it in the STFT. In the normal Fourier transform, if you see what we do, the window length is totally in the time domain. Okay, and we have a bad resolution in the good resolution in the frequency domain and bad resolution in the time domain. Whereas in Shannon windows, we have good resolution in the time domain and bad resolution in the frequency domain. In Gabor, we have square terms where square windows where we sample both time and frequency windows. And in Wavelet, if you see, depending upon the frequency component, the window length in the time domain, it is changing. Okay. Now coming to the STFT, what it does, if you remember properly, if we have this thing, the signal component of the Fourier transform, you get the signal component and this exponential stuff. However, in the STFT, we have this H star U minus T, which is basically a window. So this is the window which is used, and it is being used for the calculation of the STFT. So in STFT, we basically take a window and in the time domain, and then we take the signal components within that window, and then we go for the Fourier transform. So these are the STFT of the word Gabor. When you speak Gabor, it's STFT is spectrum. So if you see, you have a mean time, mean frequency, and then there are spreads. Okay. So at different times, different frequency components, they are there, and it is quite visible from here. Now, due to the Heisenberg-Gabor inequality, if you use a direct impulse, that means if you get a very good resolution in the time domain, if you see, the frequency domain resolution is lost. Whereas if you choose a window H, the window H is chosen as a constant. So you increase the length of the this window in the time domain. See, frequency resolution has increased, but your time resolution, it has been decreased. Similarly, if you have this Hopper signal, then from here, this is the ideal condition, and if you see in the ideal condition, there is no overlap between the signal components. Okay. However, in practicality, when we use a window length of 128, we would get some overlap region. So this is due to the frequencies spreading. Okay. Now, if you reduce the window length, your frequency dispersion is increasing, and if you increase the window length, your frequency resolution is increasing, but your resolution in the time domain, it is decreasing as compared to the window length where you had a window length of 128, right? Somewhere you have to come up with an optimized thing, and accordingly you have to decide what window length you will be using. Okay. Then these are again some of the examples where you have two atoms within two atoms means there are two signal pulses which are conjoined, and if you perform the STFT using a window length of 65, you get something like this. When you decrease the window length further to 17, you can see there are two pulses, you can make it out. Okay. Similarly, if you go for two parallel shocks, if you go for a short Gaussian analysis window, there would be cross terms present within the two shocks. And if you use a long Gaussian window, analysis, then see these cost terms, they are available in the time axis. So they are in the time axis, you are losing the resolution. Okay. And in these cases, the best way is to, if you are having any signal component, you need to increase the distance between the two distance in the frequency domain between the two sharp signals for proper analysis. Okay. Now in the ECG signal, we can get this kind of STFT spectrogram, and if we add some 50 hertz noise over here, and then we go for the STFT, then we get this kind of what you call. If you see, we are having a lot of noises apart from this ECG apart from this noise signal component, and then after thresholding, if you remove select this 50 hertz and then do the removal of this thing, or you go for the transformation, you can see the 50 hertz sinusoidal wave, it has been detected. On the other way, if you go for the thresholding in a proper manner, then you can eliminate this 50 hertz signal. However, in the denoise signal, you can see there might be some deviations in the P wave, and that is because of the fact that this frequency component, they would be having certain what do you call, certain 50 hertz components in itself, this is the signal, and they would also be removed from the denoised signal. Okay. So ECG signal with uniform white noise, and again we can go for the denoising from here, and over here again you can see there is some distortions in the P phase. So then the next topic is the Wigner-Wheeler distribution. I think we are already near the time, so maybe I will be discussing this tomorrow along with the wavelet transform, and then not tomorrow, on Friday, and then we will be closing the joint time frequency analysis chapter. Do you have any questions? Does anyone have any question? No? Okay then.